Hello, and welcome to another EPC Teardown Guide. Today we're taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE. What makes this different from the S21 is it actually has less components, making it easier to repair. Now let's get into it. To start off, you're going to want this to sit on the heat pad for at least 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long it takes for it to feel hot to the touch. What makes the disassembly of this back glass easy is that, unlike many other generations of Samsung, this back glass is a plastic that makes it much easier to get underneath without cracking anything. I'm going to start on the right side of the device here, because I know that there aren't any delicate ribbon cables on this end. You want to start by going vertical and come into the side. This is a 90% alcohol mix that we use. We want to make sure that the isopropyl alcohol we use is very concentrated, so the water content doesn't short anything out in the device. So once we're underneath that with our metal spudger, I like to use a plastic playing card to get underneath that adhesive and gently glide under the full back glass. Right. And if you do feel any resistance as you're tearing apart your device, just make sure that you're not pushing too deep, and there's nothing wrong with heating up the device a little bit more. As for specific temperatures, I recommend going between 60 or 70 degrees, because if it gets too hot, you can start damaging internal components. So, and that would be Fahrenheit, to be clear. Now, what we have here is we have the upper board, the battery underneath our wireless charger, and the lower board. First, we're going to remove this upper board and get that wireless charger out of the way. Now, I'm using a Phillips head, size 0, to remove these screws. All you'll need is a Phillips head for these devices. Samsung keeps it pretty simple whenever it comes to that. Looks like the magnetism on these screws are a little gone, so bear with me while I get these all out of the device. Now that the 9 screws on the upper housing are uninstalled, I do see a lot of people using automatic screwdrivers for phone repairs. Personally, I wouldn't recommend them because they tend to strip out your screws. Because it's all automatic, they don't necessarily know when to stop, and before you know it, the head of your screw is completely stripped, and because they're so small, it's a lot harder to repair. When you try to remove this wireless charger, you'll feel it's still connected to the main board through three ribbon cables. There is the ribbon cable that goes underneath the wireless charger that leads to this antenna, a ribbon cable for the battery, and a ribbon cable for the wireless charger itself. You'll want to start from going from the left to the right, starting from the battery, wireless charger, then that antenna, and that should let you lift all the way up and reveal the battery. So just follow along. Remove the rest of these cables. And what you'll notice is vibration motor, antenna, camera, rear cameras. We'll start with the front camera here. Use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. If your phone has cooled off by this point, I would recommend heating it up again. What I'm going to do is there is adhesive between the camera and the housing. I'm going to use my spudger to get between that adhesive and slowly remove it. Again, I'm not trying to remove the camera at this step, I'm trying to remove that adhesive between the camera and the housing. You want to be very delicate near the ribbon cable. Last thing you want to do is to cut that and damage the camera. We'll leave that face up on our mat and continue on with disconnecting the two rear cameras and the antenna. Now, the only thing left from preventing us to remove that upper board is one black screw that is above that first ribbon cable camera. Get that removed. You'll want to keep that aside from all of your other screws because it is a different length. What makes it easy is that it's also a different color, so just make sure that you keep that separated. Now we're going to pry up this upper housing. From the left side, you'll actually notice you probably can't see it on camera, but there's a small indent underneath this board that lets you lift up from the side without damaging anything. Looks like I forgot a small ribbon cable on the far left, so I'll just go ahead and remove that. That should lift right out with a little bit of persuasion. All right, so that's our upper board. We'll keep that there. Here are the two removable main cameras. I think keeping this down is a bit of adhesive, so I'll just go ahead and remove that. And you'll see the unscrewed antenna that also comes up. Here, before we remove that, we may need to add some more heat, so we'll just move on to the lower board cover so we can remove this entire wireless charger. All right, there are another 6 screws at the bottom that we'll need to remove. All right, now that those 6 screws are removed, we will take our spudger, put it near the arrows. So Samsung, what they'll do is they'll leave arrows for you to pry underneath these plastic housings. So in this case, it's right here. Get your spudger underneath there and it all should lift up fairly easily. Now we have the other sides of those 3 main ribbon cables. We'll get those removed. You'll notice a 5th camera. This is actually your fingerprint sensor that actually sees your fingerprint through the glass. An interesting side note about these is that when this technology was developed, there was a lot of talk about trying to remove some people call it the punch hole or the hole in the screen or bezel. They tried to integrate this for selfie cameras or front-facing cameras. But it was low resolution, so it didn't catch on. But as you can tell, this camera here sees right through the LCD of your device. Now there's another 3 black screws holding down the lower main board. Again, we'll want to keep those separated from the screws that held down the bracket. All right, now that lower board should be removed as long as there isn't a SIM card still installed. So we'll go ahead and remove that SIM. You can use needle nose pliers. You can use anything that's long and thin, really. So we're just gonna use the end of our alcohol bottle to slowly remove that. And now that board should release from the housing. The only thing we have left is the 2 antennas on the side and the battery. Before you remove those, I'd recommend heating up the device for another 5 minutes on about 60. We don't need anything high temperature. we'll just need it enough to loosen the adhesive behind the battery, and there's also small strips of adhesive on these antennas. And that'll heat up for another 5 minutes. Now that we've let that sit on the heating pad for a few minutes, what we're going to do next is we're going to put some isopropyl alcohol at the bottom of the battery, lift up the back so that alcohol has a moment to sit and go through the adhesive on the other end of the battery. Now that that's done, we'll take it back to our table, grab a spudger, and put it at the end of this battery here. Now, what you'll have to consider whenever you're removing these batteries is how much pressure are you putting on it? Is the battery starting to crease or bend? And are the tools you're using metal? So I could choose to use a metal spudger like this, but you run the risk of puncturing the battery and causing a lithium fire. If you are experiencing a lithium fire, I recommend another YouTube video, because hopefully we won't have that problem here. Now, it is acting a little stubborn, so I am going to use the other end. Again, we just want to make sure that we're not puncturing anything, and we're lifting up just enough to let that isopropyl alcohol penetrate at the back end of the battery. All right, so I am seeing that, I'm hearing mostly that adhesive starting to unsettle. The real game is patience whenever it comes to these batteries and making sure that you're waiting for that adhesive to slowly pry. Now that that battery's out of the way, we'll remove the antenna on this end and the antenna on this end. While we're back at the upper housing, we'll also remove the taptic motor and the final rear-facing camera. All right, that's removed. Get that taptic motor. Now, taptic motors are quite durable. My favorite method for getting these up is actually it's like a size 0 or a size 1 flathead. Those tend to work really well. I'm gonna use my tweezers here. Yeah, the only thing you have to worry about is making sure you don't damage this ribbon cable here, or these contacts, because that's where it meets the board. Let's just go ahead and really pry under there. There we are. And that is removed. Now for the final camera. And that should come right out now that we've given it plenty of heat. There we go. And that's how you tear down a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE. Thank you for watching.
Don't feel like doing a teardown yourself? Have not just one, but hundreds of devices taking up space? EPC is a global leader in the ITAD field, and it's our goal to reduce e-waste and give devices a second chance. Reach out to us today to learn more.